Hey everybody. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these, but a couple things. First of all, I wanted to show you guys the new haircut. Yeah. And more importantly, nothing really interesting has happened in my whole programming life lately until today, which is why I'm here. I know it's been about a month and a half, 2 months since the last time I've made one of these, and I've still been working very hard. Still been making sure I code or study for about 3.5 hours a day. That's my goal every day. I know that's not a whole lot, but I do work. Um, and I make sure at least one of those hours are practical, either on a whiteboard or some paper, doing simple coding exercises, or actually on my keyboard working on an assignment for the online class I'm taking, or just like a personal project I'm kind of interested in. I'm still working on that class that I started in the last video. I know it's been about 6, 7 weeks. I was hoping to be done with it by now, but work has been crazy. Um, there's this misunderstanding that teachers work very few hours, and I don't know where it comes from. I've been working 10 to 12 hours a day for the past few weeks, 6 days a week lately too. I haven't had a Saturday off since beginning of February. So it has been kind of crazy. But I've made sure to code some every day, and I do have Sundays off, so today was a really big one for me. But I wanted to get at you guys because I finally hit a wall. For the last few months, just everything's been clicking for me, and that's great. I love that. I'd take a class and they say, hey, try this. Like there was a JUnit section to this class, and I was like, oh, JUnit at test. Okay, let's go. And for some reason, I just picked that up really easily, and I was happy with that. And I haven't had anything I've struggled with lately. But this unit was different. This unit, it's the last unit in the class. So the last video I made, I was taking the first week. Now I'm in the last week, and I'm doing some of these practice problems that they give. And the first practice problem really tore me up. And the worst part about it is I thought, this is going to be easy. Give me an hour, and I'm moving on. We all know how that usually goes. This unit has been about refactoring and abstraction. Again, this class hasn't really been about writing code. It's been about organizing code, the architecture of it all. And so this practice problem was deliberately done poorly. Everything passed. It passed all the tests. It compiled. It ran. The main user interface, it worked the way we wanted it to, but it was just very poorly designed. I'll just tell you a little bit about the assignment. It was kind of an abstraction of a restaurant, and then it had fry cook, cashier, and manager. There's 3 types of employees, but when it was given to us, it didn't have any sort of employee interface or abstract parent, and that was our job, was to abstract all the similarities between cashier, fry cook, and manager, and put them all together to decrease redundancy. And I thought, you know what? Give me an hour. I got this. It is the first beautiful day we have had in my city for like a long time. We had about a week of nice days about a month ago, and then Mother Nature said, no. And it's been really cold and rainy, a little bit of snow lately. It's been gross. And today was a really good day. It was still a little chilly, high 50s. So I took my laptop. My apartment has a pool, and I just sat out by one of those tables by the pool. Guys, I found a new favorite place to code that's so nice. It's warm enough that it feels good, but it's still too cold to go swimming, so nobody was out there. It was quiet. I put some headphones in, and I said, you know what? I'm not getting up from this table until I'm done with this project. Well, like I said, I thought it was going to take an hour. I went out there at 10 o'clock, and I just got back up here. What time is it now? About 5.5 hours. 4.5 more than I thought. So looking at the mirror of this video, I'm a little burnt now. But you know what? I said I wasn't leaving until I finished it, and I didn't. So that's really what matters. And of course, I was getting frustrated. Like I I refactored all the code. I wrote or rewrote the code, I guess. Really, the IDE did a lot of it for me. And that took like about half an hour to 45 minutes, like I thought. Except nothing worked. At first, it didn't compile. So, of course, I had to play around with that. And then it compiled, and I ran it. And this whole project had like 148 tests, and I think 142 of them failed the first time. It's like, okay, here we go. And it really made me stop and think. It reminded me of a time when I actually was taking computer science classes at my college. This was in the second part of the intro sequence, so it's still like beginner. Hey, do you like this? Do you want to do this or do you not? So we still had some of those kids that were just like, I need a science credit, so let me take this. I think they got science credit. Whatever. They were taking it because they needed a credit. Some of them weren't actually interested in it. Some of them were like me, where I'm a little interested, but at the time, they didn't really want to commit to it. It was just something fun to do. That's where I was. And then, of course, we had the intended majors, the ones who said, yeah, computer science, I want to do this. And that's fine. We had those 3 levels. But, of course, some of those kids who just wanted credit were starting, this was the end of the intro sequence, end of the second semester, so some of them were starting to kind of hit the wall and not trying to get through the wall. Like, we've all met those people, right? Yeah. Nothing against the dude. He just wasn't really interested in it. And we had what they called a lab test. Okay, this class, it met twice a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays. And every other week, instead of going to class on Thursday, we would go to one of our computer labs. And what they did is the perimeter of this computer lab had computers all around it. But in the middle, they had a bunch of tables pushed together. And the way this would go is we'd go sit around those inner tables, and they'd pass out a paper test, and we'd fill out the paper test, scope questions, what is polymorphism, all the intro computer science questions. What's the difference between an array list and a linked list, those kinds of things. And then when we finish the written test, we turn the written test in, and we go to one of these computers on the wall, and we sign into the school's computer science server, and we would pull the distro code, we'd do the assignment, a bunch of to-dos, and then we'd push the assignment and we'd get graded on our code, for style, compilation, effectiveness, and does it work, and design process near the end. So that was pretty standard, and by this time, I was almost done with my assignment, and most of the people had finished the paper test and were on computers now, and we were coding, so, you had the clacking on keyboards and whatever going on. And this happened to be the debugging unit, where they would kind of do what this class I'm taking now is they'd give out code that worked, it compiled, but it didn't do what it was supposed to do. They were all semantic errors instead of syntactical errors. And it was just a matter of, okay, why isn't this working? And we were allowed to use whatever tools we wanted. This class really stressed using Vim, so we could use a command line debugger. That was kind of the main idea. But we were allowed to download it off the server and open it up in IntelliJ wasn't really that big yet. IntelliJ wasn't that big yet, but Eclipse was kind of the thing. So we could pull it and do it in Eclipse and use that debugger if we wanted. At the time, I was more of a command line debugging kind of guy and a print statement guy. But whatever you use. And this one guy, about 5 computers down, he threw his mouse onto the table and he said, "I hate debugging. Just let me write some code." And some of the more advanced students in the class started just laughing, and the professor was just rolling, just laughing so hard. I wasn't that far along yet. I was like, I guess it's kind of funny that he got upset, but where's the joke? Looking back, I'm starting to see it now that the funny part is debugging and coding aren't 2 different processes. And that's something that has taken me a long time to figure out. And I always knew it, but it really clicked for me today when I finished coding in 45 minutes. So that means I'm done with the assignment, right? No, I still had about 4.5 hours of debugging left. But what I found is that's not a bad thing. And some people will argue that if you're spending a lot of time debugging, it means you didn't spend enough time planning before you wrote your code. And okay, I don't disagree with that. I was kind of headstrong, and I just pushed through it more than I should have. I should have taken some time to draw some more diagrams and really figure it out. It's been a long time since I've done anything with inheritance, though. So that was part of the problem. I just kind of, it's not that I didn't understand the principles anymore. I just kind of forgot how this language did it. It's a Java class. Java was my first language, and then I hadn't used it since. I studied C, Python, JavaScript, and those types of things. And then this class I've been coming back to Java. So it's not so much not understanding the processes, it's just kind of remembering exactly how the processes work. Like, for example, like I mentioned, I had these 3 different types of employees, and I had to create an abstract class in this case. I chose, there probably was a way to have made it work with an interface, but an abstract parent just kind of worked better for me. And I put all these fields into employee, the abstract class, but I never took them out of the children. So I was getting a bunch of bugs from like my my setters. I was going in and saying this dot hours gets hours. Okay, that works. Except, of course, whenever you do that, if you have the fields of both the child and the parent, it gets confused. So that's one thing I'd forgotten. Another problem was that the manager and the restaurant both pointed at each other. I know that's not really the right Java terminology, but that's kind of the C brain going on. The manager had a restaurant field, and the restaurant had a manager field where they talked to each other. And part of my problem was, okay, I can't have the manager call the restaurant's method and the restaurant's method call the manager's method, because then I have an infinite loop. So that was the problem too of which one should call which and when. So there was a lot of problems there. And I did get frustrated for a while, but then I really stopped and I thought about it. I personally think if you're working on a project and you don't have to debug that project at all, you're probably not getting that much from it. And I know that's kind of a bold statement. First of all, obviously you're getting something from it, right? Either you are in a class and you're getting a grade for it, or you're at a job and you're getting paid for it. So you're usually getting something if you're doing a project. But I'm talking about developmentally, like yourself becoming a better developer. If you can do it right away, yeah, that's cool. But what are you really learning? Like when we first started working on like polymorphism and inheritance, I know I'm struggling with it now because it's been a while. But when we first learned it in those classes, I had it. I don't know why it worked so well for me. I know that sounds a little braggy, but what I would do is I'd sit there and be the cool kid, and I'd do the same exercises over and over again. Like I remember one I really enjoyed doing is I made a shape interface, and I made circle, rectangle, triangle, and circle, and all of them had get perimeter and get area methods. And I know I sound really stupid. I just said circle.get perimeter. But what I did is I made a get circumference method and the get perimeter called the get circumference because I'm kind of a big deal. And then I made like a shape UI where I made an array list of all these different shapes. And then I went through and called each of the get perimeter and get area methods. Pretty simple like beginning polymorphism idea. And I just thought it was so cool. So I'd sat there and I'd write it out at least once a day. I'd go in and I'd delete it off my computer and I'd open up my Vim, because that's just what we used, and I would rewrite it. And eventually my professor, because I would always contact the server. Each student had kind of their own partition, I guess. But the professors go in and see what we were working on whenever they wanted. And he sat me aside. He said, "Chris, why are you writing the same freaking thing every day?" And I was like, "It's cool, right?" And he looked at me and he said, "I guess, but what are you learning from doing this? And he was right. I wasn't really learning anything more. I just thought I was kind of a big deal because I could do this thing. I wasn't getting anything from it. And of course, by the third or fourth day, there were no bugs. I wasn't thinking anymore. I was just public, class, square, extends, rectangle. I knew it. So I mean, I guess that was good to reset the idea or just kind of familiarize myself with the syntax involved with interfaces and abstract classes and parent classes in general. And that's good, but I wasn't learning anything anymore. And I noticed that that's kind of how I'm feeling about debugging now is if I go through a project without having to touch that debugger, or even if you're not using a debugger, like I know IntelliJ and Eclipse, if you're using Java and probably every other IDE ever has one for you to use, or if you're using a command line debugger like I did in college, print statements, or even like pencil and paper. Just, okay, A equals 5 here, A should equal 4 here, but I'm getting 6 here. Oh, that's because I'm using the increment operator instead of the decrement operator, or whatever. If you don't have to think through your code, I mean, it's cool that you've mastered that skill, or more realistically mastered it in that scope of how you're using it. I mean, that's cool, but you're not really getting any better from it. So that's kind of my mindset now is I want to stop doing things that I can do and start doing things that I can't do. And I found that's one thing I was really scared of in the beginning is failing. And that's one of my weaknesses in general. I'm scared to be wrong. But you learn more from being wrong than you do from being right. So one thing I've been doing now is I'm pulling Java projects off of GitHub onto my machine. I'm running it and saying, okay, it works. This repo works. And then I go in and I make it crash. And I just stop and say, okay, getting rid of this line of code either stopped the compilation or it stopped it from running correctly. Why? And I kind of just go in there and I just roll my sleeves up and get my hands dirty and see what's going on. So that's something that's really big to me. And that's one of my goals for myself, both in computer science and in teaching and in life and whatever. I'm trying to stop being afraid of being wrong. And that's made me fall in love with debugging. Because now when I see 142 of 148 tests failed, I actually start to get excited. Now, I get to say, great, what am I about to learn? Sometimes I learn that I'm stupid and I made a typo. Whatever. Sometimes I learn that, oh, this line of code does not do what I think it was going to do. I love those moments. Like, as I mentioned, accidentally declaring the fields in both the children and the parent. I didn't realize that that wouldn't work. I didn't know that. Now I do. Learned something new today. So this has stopped, these series have stopped being so much my advice, more as kind of a video diary of what I'm doing. But if you watch this, that's my advice. Go be wrong. Go break stuff. If nothing else, don't save. Don't save your code. Or better yet, save an original copy and then create yourself I personally call it an F-up copy. Bad language. In my code, in my directory, where I go break the F-up code. And then I say, okay, well, this is a complete disaster now. Delete. And then I go back to the original code that I pulled. And it's the old version. And that, GitHub is very good for version maintenance. A lot of times I'll pull one and I'll make a F-up fork. And then when I'm done messing up and breaking this person's project as much as I can, I'll get rid of the F-up branch and I'll go back to the master branch. Things like that. Don't be afraid to be wrong. The truest thing about life is you're going to be wrong more often than you're right anyway. So, you're going to have a pretty tough life if you can't be wrong. But more importantly, your life's not going to go anywhere if you're never wrong. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to know everything right now, because then there's no room to grow. So that's my rant, diary thing for the day. In the comments, because every video has to have probing questions in the comments now, what's your favorite debugger? Do you use the debugger in your IDE? Do you like to use print statements? Do you like to use command line debuggers like GDB or PDB or whatever? Or do you like to just take out a piece of paper and see what's supposed to happen? Of course, the best three debuggers, sorry, Mac still has that window effect. Three best debuggers are your brain, sleep, and caffeine. So there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it's not this long until I make another one. But I also don't want to just make one to make it. I don't want to say something new. Like, I've talked a little bit about IDEs and things and code editors, but I don't want to make another video on those because I already talked about them in previous videos. I don't want to repeat myself. I want to basically benchmark when I learn new things. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a mess. As I mentioned, I went outside at 10 and didn't get back until about 3. So I've been kind of sweating and in the sun, but it was fun. I find that sunlight is also a very good debugger. Just getting out of the apartment for a little while, taking a walk, whatever really helps. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. It's been great talking to you again. Hopefully I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.